Fantastic. All right. Why don't we begin with this? Why don't you tell me what soft fascination is again? What is this whole idea of soft fascination, and why is it important to know? Because it could save you all, i.e. parents, a whole lot of time and energy if we understand that concept.
It's being aware of everything, taking in everything instead of focusing on one thing, being able to focus on everything.
Yes, if you didn't hear that, Cassie said it's this kind of awareness that is a focus on everything, not just one thing. As a matter of fact, she went as far as to say, Cassie, to say that it's a reason why children don't put on their shoes the first, second, fifth, or 10th time. Is that what you said? Okay, that's what I said.
So close.
Okay, close. All right. And they don't do their chores, and they can't put their toys away after 20th prompt. So fast, it's also referred to as effortless attention. You recall? Effortless attention, where the mind wanders gently, engaged in everything that comes within the purview of their perception. They are intensely focused on that bird 2 miles up in the sky as it flies past the clouds, where we are not a lot of times. Now, we can engage in soft fascination. We need a lot of work on that, because through time you can lose that capacity, because you attend, or the form of attention we engage in is referred to as hard attention versus soft fascination. Hard attention is required at some point by all. And it's this attention where you're focusing on a particular task, like driving. When you're driving, you should be focused on driving, right? Or tying on your shoes, then you focus on tying your shoes, or when you're cooking, or when you're washing dishes. That's what gets the job done. Now, when you're engaged in soft fascination, when you should be driving, that could be problematical, right? Again, I start out saying it could save us a whole lot of grief if we understand this concept of soft fascination, because a lot of parents believe that the child is not tying their shoes when they're being told, or taking out the trash, or putting away the toys just because they're lazy. In fact, children cannot be lazy. It's impossible for them to be lazy, because they constantly engage in the world around them, so they're busy, at least engage in the world around them. So you will never encounter a lazy child. Now, the child is lazy only because they are lazy through our eyes, in the eyes of the adult. So that is a reflection of judgment. So anytime you hear a parent who says, my child is lazy, the parent is engaged in criticism, so judging the child. Okay, did that help? Did that not save you a lot of time now?
I have a question.
Yes.
Just kind of made me curious. Would ADHD correlate with soft fascination? Like if you struggle with attention, with like hard focus?
There has been a connection to ADHD regarding the concept of soft fascination. It is very likely they're engaged in hyper soft fascination, where they just engage in whatever is happening instead of engaging in hard attention when they are supposed to. Now, most children are ADHD by nature, not in the classical sense that we tend to diagnose kids with ADHD. I'm not doubting, because I do diagnose kids with ADHD, and I'm not doubting that they don't have it. But the issue is, it almost sounds like anytime a child can't pay attention, That's our default sort of response to, but when in fact it is soft fascination. So soft fascination is not a deficit. We don't diagnose children with soft fascination because it is an important process. If you recall the last time I spoke about soft fascination, I said, here's part reason why it is an important process. The child is actually engaging in self-reflection. Soft fascination is the process of making sense of whatever is happening or whoever is happening around them, their experience. So they're actually making sense of whatever their experience is that they are having in the moment. They are actually, so self-fascination is the process of reflection. And that's why when they see a bird 2 miles or 10 miles up in the sky, they go, Mom or Dad, look, it's a bird. No, it's a plane. No, it's a... No, that's not that. But it's like, they're like, oh, why is it flying backwards? Or they're not flying backwards, but I'm thinking like a child, right? So they then question whatever is happening, if not outwardly, inwardly. So what's happening is they're actually in the process of reflection. So when they pause to look at a flower, an orange or yellow flower that is surrounded by green grass, they're curious to why that is happening. That sounds like Dakota. Dakota in the house. Now we can really begin.
Appreciate you waiting.
Yeah, you appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes.
We can now get serious. All the things I've just said in the past 10 minutes, insignificant. Now the reality. Okay, here. So again, important, understanding soft fascination. And I only bring this up. Because, once again, it kind of makes sense a lot of the time that the child doesn't do what they're told to do, not because they don't want to do it. I'm sure there are some things they may not want to do, but for the most part, they don't do is because they're occupied doing something else. Okay? All right. I have a problem with us sometimes as parents. This whole notion of savior complex. You recognize that? Savior complex. Yep, we do it to our children as well. Do what we can, right, to save them from the hardship of life. It is very important that kids learn from real life consequences. It is not our job to save them from that. The consequences of hardship, the hardship itself that is a part of life, is there for a reason. And it is for children to learn. And it is for adults to learn from, yes. So be very cautious. Sometimes it prevents us, I'll focus on the child, prevents the child from being able to grow and mature. And it prevents us too, right, from growing and maturing, whether it's as parents, but as individuals as well. I'm a believer that one of the fastest way, if not the fastest way, to grow up and mature is to parent children. That's one. There are many things in life that can shift our perspective to a great degree, such as death, right? Can do that. Death of a loved one can alter our psychological experience and understanding of life. How about birth of a child? That's another one. Can alter our life to an extreme. Relationships, very healthy and safe relationship can move us in places that we've never been before. So I'm talking about intimate relationship. But having children and parenting is a process in and of itself that can also move us as well, as long as we are adaptive, as long as we are open to the process. It's hard to be when we grow up to be adults, and because we grow up to be adults, we hold on to many of the things we've learned from our past, and we make those things that we have learned from our past reality. And unfortunately, a lot of that which is reality is not reality. So this belief, for instance, that tough love is an important, very important phenomenon that a child must experience, we have to, how I think and have defined tough love, the way I explained it a couple of trainings ago, clearly makes, or at least makes clear sense that tough love can be detrimental and is considered one of the most detrimental things we can impose on a child. Okay, so neuroception, this is a neat concept. We have heard this before, or have we? So this neuroception, keep this one in mind. I tell you to keep every concept in mind for the past 7 trainings, but this one is the most important, for real this time, not for fake. Okay, it's our regulation system connects with the child's regulatory system. The child's brain is actually designed to match ours, so to match our system. The child's brain, it is an important phenomenon because it helps them to survive, but equally as important, it helps them to grow, develop. This only works if we are mature ourselves. So neuroception, these kids have this relational, psychological, social, emotional radio. They are radio receivers of sorts. Psychologically built and calibrated to detect all of our emotions. They will pick it up and pick it up quickly. When we are stressed, they will know it. Even if we try to conceal it behind the fake smile that we often maybe use in an attempt to protect them from stress or pain. The system is highly effective as it helps, it shapes the child's developing mind. That's why neuroception is an important phenomenon. Now, if the parent is mature and shows a high intensity for calm, a high capacity for calm, the child feels calm. They may not be able to explain it, but they will experience it. They will feel calm. On the other hand, if we are agitated, the child will experience agitation. Furthermore, the problem with the way we feel sometimes and these negative emotions we sometimes project onto the child activates their danger system. So they perceive us as dangerous. This creates what's called an irresolvable paradox. This idea that on one hand, they love us and they want to love us and they love us forever and will continue to love us, but in the same breath, they fear us. Irresolvable paradox. Not knowing what to do or what to feel. They are in limbo. Again, this irresolvable paradox is by definition what it sounds like, seemingly irresolvable to the child. This feeling that is the paradox that explains on one hand they love their children, they love their parents, but on the other hand, the very parent that they adore and respect and inspire to be is the object of their greatest fear. Isn't that fascinating? It's fascinating to me. I can see that in most kids. I had a conversation with 2 kids today who was in conflict, who needed assistance. And I got a glimpse in how they resolve their conflict, or rather inability to resolve their conflict, which gives me a glimpse into the way perhaps their parents resolve or struggle with resolving conflict. Anyway, any question at this point regarding neuroception or soft fascination or savior complex?
What would you recommend for a parent who, or a conscious collaborator who notices their own anxiety and understands how it's going to impact the kid? And by, because one option is to remove yourself from the space. That would be something I would think of, I think. But there's probably damage there, right? If they're hoping you could stay in the space. Is there anything you would, besides working on yourself, is there any tips you have?
I like how you started out saying removing yourself. We talked last week, I believe, last training, about putting yourself in time out or time away, we refer to as, and then coming back to help resolve the neglect or abandonment, which is going back to the child and say, can you help me be a better parent? I noticed that I got really upset and agitated, and I was feeling a lot of tension inside and don't know how to resolve it. And that's again a reminder why I stepped away. And then have the child, putting the child in the position to help. And I will tell you what, just about every child will be more than willing to extend a hand of compassion and say, yeah, Dada, why don't you just breathe? Or some version of that, right? Or why don't you just, eat ice cream, or whatever we do to assuage the child's tension, right? Practice. Patience is a practice. You've heard me this before. Patience cannot be a declaration. It needs to be a practice. So we can say to ourselves, I need patience. I need more patience all day long till the cows and goats come home, and we'll never achieve it. So declare all we want. We must practice that. And we have an abundance of opportunities throughout the day to help us practice that, right? If you drive, maybe traffic, right? If you're into politics, practice, right? If you're into fighting other people and you like the fact that you like to argue, that's a good way to, I don't know what I meant by all of that, by that part there, but sometimes I feel like we look for a reason to seek validation, so we create conflict, is what I guess what I'm trying to say. I should have said that to begin with. So these and many other, if you're working with children, if you have children, there you go. If you're entertaining school, homework, studying for exam, there you go. There's internal conflict happening within and around us that provide us with, again, abundant opportunities to help us find resolve. I want to talk about this and make this clear. I know I've touched on this before, but with this group, maybe from time to time, but this whole notion of verbosity. Verbosity. Is there anything that is a greater threat to a child? There are many things, but verbosity is one of those things. So when I say there are many things, here's another thing: not listening to a child, which occurs on a routine basis. We're all subject to not listening. But if you think about verbosity, sure, verbosity is in essence, if you're engaged in verbosity, then you're probably not listening anyways. But here's verbosity in my eyes. This is 18 years of experience working with parents. It's talking at the child, talking for the child, talking over the child, talking through the child. Man, goodness. And talking past the child. What do you suppose talking past the child is? I can save you time. I'll tell you what it is. I see it very often. I see how adults may sometimes use motherese with a 2, 3, 5, and an 8-year-older. Like, hi, how are you today? Please do not do that to a 2-year-older, okay? That's talking past the child, as if the child is like an infant. A motherese is good when the infant is an infant, okay? So, I'm sorry, that was sarcastic. Mindful. Mindful.
What's funny is if you have a child who isn't used to being spoken to in that way, and then someone does, the look on their face, they're like,
And by the way, verbosity is presented as some kind of disguise, referred to as teaching moments. Yeah, that was a sarcastic laugh. Yes, so we have many teaching moments that are not in fact teaching moments. Well, they are if you ask the parents, but it can come off as quite how do you say, condescending, or come off as like mocking the child. All right, so please be very careful. If I see a parent who is verbose, there's a term I use that is often associated with verbose parents, and it is it's referred to as penchant for control. There is no lesson there. There is no lesson there. The parent who talks at the child. But there is a strong desire to control the child, and that's what it is, in the form of what appears to be a lesson in disguise. If a parent does have a penchant for control, you will see that the way they teach is over-teaching. It is highly destructive to the child, because the child is not given an opportunity to think. I have kids who sit in my office and cannot describe who they are as a person. I had this 16-year-old, she had just turned 17. When I asked her to describe herself, three traits that describe you as a person, she could not do that. So then I helped her by asking her a very simple question, like this. What does your parent think of you? If your parent was here and was able to describe you, and one of the things that came out was smart. So I asked her, do you think you're smart? And she said, I don't know, but I guess I am if my mom tells me I am. So she can't think for herself. So my point is this: when we start talking at the child, or over the child, or past the child, or through the child, they don't have the room to think for themselves, so they will rely on our expertise, which is not a good thing, by the way. And use that word as if you think you are an expert in the way of parenting. Once again, I'm sarcastic, but my point is this: we can unintentionally engage in a very vicious cycle of preaching and teaching, to the point where because we have a penchant for control, if the child is not controlled, they will become our worst enemy. That's right. Oftentimes the child presents as our worst enemy. So what do we do with our worst enemy? We do what we need to: punish them, chastise them, and crucify them if we need to, right? These things, the things that we do, rather, are things that the child will carry on into adulthood. And if the child is confused, it takes a lot of time to find themselves. Have you heard that, the 7 wonders of the world? I'm kind of giving you a hint here. What do you suppose have been referred to as the 8th? The 8th wonder of the world? The child. The child. Think about that. They are considered the 8th wonder of the world. And by definition, these things that we are or present as, or should, I guess, show all to, these wonders of the world are not clearly defined sometimes when we are with the child, because we're too immersed in trying to fix them a particular way. Now, I want you to consider that for a moment. We have 15 kids here. What more would you need? 15 times eighth wonder of the world. And I love to see when they do. The entire day was just exhilarating for me this day. Just jumping from child to child as much as I could and watch them wonder. And the awe is my portion, just to be in awe of the eighth wonder of the world. In any case, that is something to take consideration, think about, okay? All right, any questions or comments at this point?
Have you found a time where the child wanted some sort of, oh, here's a scenario. A kid, actually I don't know if this is a good scenario. A kid is invited to play on a Saturday, and they don't really want to go, but they, don't want to hurt their friends' feelings. And then, the parent may say, you know what, this next weekend's not a good one, and then the child is relieved that, the parent stepped in and, held a boundary for them. As I was talking, my example fell apart there. Because the question was going to be, do you ever find yourself seeing kids who wish their parents had more boundaries for them? And maybe they do, and you can do that through a conscious parenting lens.
Yeah. What would be the best approach for something like that?
As I was talking about it, I would think I'd encourage the kid to be honest with their friend, rather than the parent getting in between and now, if they weren't comfortable, were you asking about the scenario that I brought up? Is that what you were asking?
No, you were going where I was hoping you would go.
Conscious parenting.
Yeah, how would we respond to something like that? Yeah.
As a conscious parent, I would hope that I'm present and available for when a kid needed some advice. Say to a friend wanted them to come over and they were trying to navigate how they tell their friend no. I could see that being a situation where you're just listening and they're just processing out loud. And there's a good chance they'll find an answer for themselves. Or they may ask you straight up, like, I really don't know what to do. Do you have some suggestions?
Yeah, and then we give them suggestions. Let's say if they don't, right? And you could give them options. We could say this or this. Which would you prefer to say to your friends? And so to try your best to empower them. Now, that being said, I've seen parents who force their kids, nope, it's your responsibility, and that can be a good thing. The problem with that, you have to know your child. Some children are like overly anxious, extremely fearful of the repercussion, and that could do more damage, right? And we're thinking, well, maybe that person needs that kind of tough love, experience to overcome, so that they can develop a stronger inner fortitude, and whatever, however we reason that. I'm okay with the parent. I would prefer to offer the child the opportunity to be responsible for that by offering options. What is your approach to this situation? If they don't know, well, what are your options? And they said, I really don't know, which I've had my kids say. I said, okay, it sounds to me that you can say this or that. Which would you prefer to tell your friend? And I would encourage that. But there's situations where she couldn't speak to the teacher. And she was afraid that the teacher would reprimand her. That's where I come in. Yes. Hey, I need your help, Miss Smith. My daughter says, at the time, my daughter says that you're a bum of a teacher, and which we want to be able to fix this together. No, we don't say that, right? We just say, hey, there's some issues and tension there, and we're just wondering what that was. But yes, yeah, if we can, we try to encourage, because we want our child to achieve what we often talk about in training is grit, right? Perseverance, the holy grail of all human traits. You know what? Why don't we just go there? Grit. Let's talk about that. You hear that? You hear that? Make sure you get that on video. All right. I venture to guess that everyone in this room have heard of emotional intelligence, right? Yes. So we don't need to talk about it. Yeah. It is an important trait to have for various reasons. It is the one defining trait that will guarantee you success in life. Yep, I said it. 100% guaranteed. And the reasons why. To start off with, one of the 5 major components of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. So people who are really elevated on that spectrum are highly self-aware. Now, self-awareness, we have discussed before, is an important process in and of itself because it helps you to be self-aware. Yeah. Now, it helps also enhance the quality of your relational intelligence. RQ. I venture to guess that probably half of you have never heard of that. RI. Relational intelligence is not what you think it is. It has nothing to do with your relationship with the other in the sense that you understand the other person, but rather, relational intelligence is your ability to read other people's behaviors, actions, feelings, and thoughts so you can get a glimpse of yourself. You watch other people respond, react to you, interact with you, and you get an idea of who you are. Because how they respond and act and react around you, they are doing it for a particular reason. You have elicited a response from them that prompted their reaction. So by watching the way that people react to you, you take that information and you start to see who you are as a person. Isn't that cool? You might not like what you see sometimes, right? Isn't that cool? Learn? Yeah? Yeah. Because remember, we talk about self-skepticism, right? Or self-criticism as a great practice sometimes, right? If you process self-criticism and judgment, self-judgment through the lens of consciousness. The second component is self-regulation. People who are on the high end of the spectrum of emotional intelligence have a remarkable capacity for self-regulation, their ability to control their emotions, thoughts, and actions, their behavior. This is highly significant in the context of relationship, any form of relationship. These individuals are not only good at relating to their self-regulation, but relating to their emotions and thoughts, but they're exceptional in their ability in terms of producing constructive ways to express their emotions. Yep, I said it. They're really good at finding constructive ways to convey their emotions and thoughts. So you will find these individuals able to articulate their emotion with precision. And now, I'm not just saying using like sophisticated definitions. I'm talking about the way that they use their language and how they use their language, and the words they use can convey with great precision their experience. So I know that there are a couple kids in here, they don't have a sophisticated vocabulary, meaning they don't have what you would expect an adult to have, somewhere between 15,000 to 20,000 words. Okay. So these kids in here, despite having a limited vocabulary, are very good at it, conveying their feelings and thoughts to get their thoughts and feelings across, while others do not. So I see that some struggle in here conveying their feelings and thoughts, maybe perhaps not because they don't have the words for it, but because they've been modeled not to be able to convey those words in a beneficial approach, okay? As it turns out, people on the high end of the spectrum of emotional intelligence show a remarkable capacity for motivation. Motivation to perform tasks and behaviors, not the tasks and behaviors that we impose on children. That's not what I mean. But rather, in anything that they're interested in, they will spend hours and days and weeks and months to perfect on that, whatever task they want to perform or whatever they want to understand. And the reason why they do that is because they gain what's called intrinsic reward. If I can build this, and I do it in a way that I am satisfied, I feel pretty darn good about myself. Not because I can make money out of this, or not because that's just a byproduct. It's sort of a result. Anyways, I got distracted because, okay, anyway, on the high end of the spectrum, individuals with emotional intelligence actually score high on the scale of empathy. They not only can read other people's experiences, emotions, thoughts, and actions, but boy, are they accurate. They are very accurate at doing so. Now, not necessarily 100%, because we don't know for sure what the other person is feeling ever 100%. But nonetheless, they are really good at reading facial expressions, body language. I like that. I like the sound of that. Spinach. Okay, here we go. And finally, the fifth component is social skills. Relating to other people, communicating with other people, and guiding other people. They are really masterful at manipulating other people in a very good way. They're good at convincing other people for the benefit, for the sake of humanity, not for evil, right? And we know that people with high emotional intelligence on the higher end of the spectrum shows the trait of all traits, which we referred to earlier as the holy grail of all traits, resilience. People with high emotional intelligence show remarkable resilience. They can endure a lot of tension and stress and breakups and the anguish of death and pain regarding the most heinous forms of abuse, and can overcome. And even if they are engaging or enduring tension and pain and stress in the moment, their capacity for recovery is often very quick. They maintain a steadiness and stability that is often the routine in daily life. They are, in other words, drama-less. Now, I bring emotional intelligence up because here you are, probably in Sheridan, Wyoming, the most, here we are. I have I bet if I were to measure your EI, you would have the highest scores in Sheridan, Wyoming.
Humility too.
I would probably score the highest.
That's an actual, so emotional intelligence, how does that overlap with, I mean, I could see totally where it overlap with the grounding values and all that.
Yes, they show compassion, they show consciousness. That's a part of the self-awareness, the consciousness piece. Now, there is no compassion without self-consciousness, so it's all related, right? But that, and then you relate that to empathy. Now, I want to make this clear. There are 3 different forms of empathy. All of us have what's called cognitive empathy. Things make sense to us very easily, right? Other people's thoughts, but our interpretation of it may not be entirely accurate. So the other form of empathy is emotional empathy. Now, I dare say about 75% of us are in the average range to below average range of emotional empathy. 1 in 4 of us are really good at emotional empathy. And the third and final is reserved for very special people, and that's called compassionate empathy. The Mother Teresas of the world, the Gandhis, the Martin Luther Kings of the world, the Dakotas of the world, and the Jenny and the Paul and the Cassies of the world. Outside of that, the rest of us are inept. Okay? Did I forget Lyndon?
So empathy being I can understand your emotions, your emotional state, and then the compassion piece would be that next step of wanting to resolve or help you with that suffering.
Yeah,
that?
very good. So compassion is defined as a two-state process. The first state is I recognize your suffering as a human being. The second state is because I recognize your suffering, I will do whatever I can within my power to help you alleviate your suffering. The second part of that definition, compassion, is what makes it compassion. Okay, and finally, conscious parents or teachers, we emphasize a peaceful and calm and compassionate approach to the way we relate to children. We demonstrate what's called mindful intelligence, MQ or MI. So this is a form of intelligence that combines both emotional intelligence and mindfulness. So if you are really high on EI, try to practice mindfulness. You add that component to that, then you jump into the spectrum of MI, mindfulness intelligence, which combine both emotional intelligence and mindfulness. You will be a goddess or a god, like Paul. Okay? All right. Yes, and by the way, just to be clear, when we talk about humility, I'm with Paul here. The combination of the two types of intelligence presents itself and highlights these following qualities. The capacity to stay present. So MQ or MI, the capacity to stay present, being non-judgmental. You know, it's about 75% of the things that run through our head is either a criticism, a judgment, or just a negative cognitive process. For the mindful, it's the other way around. 75% of what presents itself is empathic or compassionate. They maintain a state of calm, thoughtfulness, patience, humility, a greater sense of self-awareness, and empathic compassion. All right, we're coming to the end here. Final questions or comments? What do you think about MQ? I'm excited about that one. Most people never heard of that. Like 99.9% of the world population probably never heard of that form of intelligence. There's so many too, by the way. Humility, intellectual humility is a form of intelligence too. Attentional, and you know, I have a test that measures AQ, which is attentional quotients, or attentional intelligence. We don't think attention, paying attention is a form of intelligence. XQ, form of intelligence, right? Completely agreed with me. Or maybe not, I should not assume. So, XQ is experiential intelligence. These individuals are really good at taking in their experiences and learning from them. All right. Anyone else as vocal?
We talk about working on ourselves. As you were talking about all these different intelligence quotients, the EQ and the RQ and all those things. Are there practical things like with listening to my child, like what's going to fast track? And of course, this is the standard question, right, in the Western world is how do I fast track this thing, right? So do you have any recommendations there as far as what we can do to hone these skills and get to our highest potential?
Yes, I do. Mindfulness is the practice. Although mindfulness, MQ, is a form of intelligence, but to get to MQ, into that realm, the practice is mindfulness. So here's an example, practical example. When your child is speaking, be present. Or engage in what Vivi, my wife, says, duct tape meditation. So get duct tape and put it on your mouth. That's a sure way to really get you to listen, if not with your mind, but with your ears. Because your ears can be listening, but your mind may be judging, right? So mindfulness means here, staying present, listening. See, I'm hearing everything there. So, and paying attention to how you are reacting and responding. Your mind will give you cues. As a matter of fact, 80,000 of them a day. So thoughts, right? The average person, anywhere between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of cues. So when you have thoughts or sensation or experiences like feelings, these are cues to get you back sort of grounded. Remember, we are groundedness for the child. Think about these thoughts. You may not be able to interpret, and it may not even matter where they came from. They came from the past. It doesn't. You don't need to go searching for that. I saved you time. But you think about that. Let's say if you're being mean and the tone is loud and it comes off as critical. By the way, a loud tone is for a lot of kids critical. Even if you say, I'm happy to see you, the fact that it's loud can come off as critical. Okay? So we have to be mindful. No volume control. Use a gentle voice when in certain spaces, right? We do that for a reason, because we have kids who may have had traumas we don't know about, and we're sensitive to that. Anyways, that's one thing that we can do. YouTube. I go to how can I improve my emotional intelligence. Yeah, I like watching because that can be very educational. But remember, education is only as good as the practice itself. So throughout the day, today, Monday, I practice consciousness because every Monday is consciousness day. So I was walking around as I'm like along in the library there, I was aware that I was walking with consciousness, leaving footprints of love and compassion for all sentient children in hopes that they will cross my path. And it is my way of transmitting love and compassion to them. See, there are numerous things that you can do. I sat outside for about 30 minutes. There was no one out there. Everyone was in here. And I was listening to the wind and the trees above me, just wavering and clapping, and feeling the sensation of the heat and sun, reminding me to stay grounded. That's another practice. And here's another practice, a mantra for you. Tell me more. I'm gonna go with Jenny. Tell me more. What do you mean? Explain that to me. Help me understand. These are mantras that we can use with children. Right? All right. Any other questions or comments? That was a full hour and a half. Oh, Cassie, you had something to say.
Going back to the dealing with the situation of a child trying to say no to a friend kind of thing.
Sure.
That made me think of when I was little. I had a friend who, she was in a situation where she didn't want to do something, but she didn't want to hurt the other person's feelings, and so she made up an excuse of, oh, my mom told me I couldn't. And I remember being super envious of that, that her mom had that conversation with her to give her that out. But then as I was reflecting on it, I didn't know if that was a good practice, since, I mean, it's teaching to lie, I guess.
Oh, yes.
Because that might not actually be the case. but
Mm.
it's kind of a white lie. Like,
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily get hurt. So then, I don't know. It's kind of the argument of when does like a grain of rice become a cup?
Oh, I see where you're going with
So,
that.
Like, when does it become a bad thing?
Yeah, we have to be careful when using those metaphors because we can overgeneralize. I love it when children lie, whether it's to parents or to me. They're sending us a message, and we need to understand that lying is communication. Good, bad, or neutral, the way that we interpret that. Lying is not bad. It is a form of manipulation and an adaptive strategy. It is wonderful. The more they lie, the better. That's right, I said that. But no, that's not necessarily true. And however, it doesn't mean that they're going to grow up to be psychopaths or antisocial. That is a sham. That's not true. We all do it. Every human being on this planet does it. And it is, again, I'm not kidding when I say I like it when children lie. Because they're communicating to me something about that they don't feel safe at this moment in time, so they need to alter their perspective in an attempt to defend against perceived attack. And we are the attack. Because if they lie, we will punish them, right? Or in some fashion or some form, okay? Yeah, so you know what you do? You continue to be honest. That's what you do, because neuroception, they will mirror us eventually. When they see us as the standard of morality. So you're not imposing morality on the child, no. You're taking advantage of the mirror neurons that they have by respecting them a particular way, which then creates these neuronal connection. And the more honest you are, the more it is consolidated in the child. That's how you combat lying.
Full disclosure, I let my kids do that. Like when I let myself be the excuse, and what I noticed is my son just gradually grew out of needing me to do it. He just gradually took over doing it himself. And my middle child is doing it less and less. It's mostly like a social thing. She'll text me and say, call me and tell me I have to come home.
I love this.
You do that, right? That's not mine.
Yeah, totally.
So-
Yeah, sure, sorry, you gotta come home, you know.
So strategic, I love it.
I know.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's similar to you that I don't mind if they're not ready to say it directly yet. Like I don't mind being oh, my mom said I can, or I don't know. We'll see. I'll be aware of how we approach it going forward.
Jenny, you have it figured out. I mean, teach your kids to lie. I love it. If there is any poor kind of parenting that I would advocate, that would be it. Absolutely. I love it. Like I said, I have to try to convince parents that it's okay to lie. The more they lie, the better. Because what they're actually learning is adaptive skills over time. Now, of course, you as the parent don't want that because it reflects off your parenting. And that's what you're really concerned about under the guise. I'm worried about my kids becoming a psychopath. Sure, I understand. No parent want their child to grow up to be an antisocial, right? To be a criminal, to be manipulative. But they grow out of it, unless they're a psychopath. Most kids are not. 98% of kids are not, I would be concerned if they were a psychopath, then sure, but no, lying is fantastic. Yeah, I fully embrace it.
If I can say something, I think it's really important to allow your children or children around you to be involved in conversations that you have where you're not comfortable with doing whatever it is, and you say no, because no is important, and no is no, or you give alternatives of I don't feel like I want to do that today. A lot of times we again want to shelter our kids, right? Play this hero complex. Oh, go to the other room while I'm having this adult conversation, or while I'm having this adult conversation. But that only hurts them. it hurts them because one, your attention isn't on them, and you're telling them they're not important. But two, like they don't get to see you interact with others, and if they don't see you interact with others, how can we expect them to know how to?
Well, don't you think it's important for them to see that you say no and then the world doesn't fall apart? Then you're still
Exactly.
friends with that person, then
Mm.
it's still
Exactly.
okay the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So use my kid to get out of work.
Words as I can.
That's why she's got the phone.
My kid just won't let me.
Oh, yeah.
Burn.
Call me and tell me you just threw up.
Sorry, kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more uncomfortable with adults. Like, it's a whole different kind of intention. But even at that, we are still kids in disguise in a lot of ways. Remember, every experience of trauma or perceived trauma is born an inner child. So we might consist of 10,000 inner child just looking for validation or sensitive and vulnerable. So we need to protect ourselves from every instant, right? I might have an inner child who gets angry or emerges when someone pulls in front of me in traffic, right? Which is a different inner child when someone's not listening to me and I feel invalidated. Which is an inner child that doesn't pay attention when I say something, right? Because I was never attended as a child. I felt that from my mom, right? When I brought home a picture and she just kept washing dishes and dismissed it and said, oh, that's neat, right? See, there are many instances, many experiences we encounter that have created for this insecurity that is part of our humanity. All right, any other poor parenting advice?
I was like, this is going off the rails.
Make sure, let all parents know about this one. Yeah, please put it on the website.
Encourage your kids to lie.
It will make sense if they want to come to me and I can explain it to them further and deeper. There's more to it, by the way. This whole idea behind the power of lies. Yeah, it's really neat. All right, next week. Yeah. Good to see you again. All righty.